Fantastic. We are live. Let me start with for the people who have just joined in the stream. Briefly tell what Startups of London is and what we do. This is actually one of the things that we do, which is called live streamed consultancy sessions with founders, business owners.
Fantastic. We're live.
Yeah.
Let me start with for the people who have just joined in the stream.
Okay. I think I'm
of London is
on in one of your
one of the things that we do.
I'll mute. I think it was Steven. I muted you from there. Okay, just a quick misdirection. And getting back to the topic. So what we do is initially we started as a video documentary service for the interesting startups that are based in London. So what we did was me and my camera crew went to the offices, shot around the office, did employee interviews, founder interviews, and we did 18 of those. With the COVID situation, like the question was, how can we stick to our mission of helping founders and creating valuable content for the entrepreneurs, startup professionals in London? And that's how this came about. And I'm glad it did. This is kind of like an invention that was born out of necessity for us. So you can find all of that in our channel. I won't go into the details. If you would like to support us, you can like, share, and subscribe. Also, you can use the chat area on the right side of the screen if you have any comments or if you'd like to ask something. So the format of this is a 45-minute conversation between Steven Dash, who's our founder today, and Julie, and I'll get out of the way most of the time after doing the brief introductions. So let me start with Dash, and I won't go into the details of her personal experience, but rather her current problem that she could use help with, and that is data partnerships primarily. She would like to partner up with a larger company which can provide, which can power their solution from a data perspective. She's mentioned that this is a key barrier to success right now, and it's really important to get a better understanding of how she can communicate for the sales and broker a deal. And growth marketing is another thing, but that's, I think, the second priority. So Julie is the CEO of Spark Consulting. She has over 20 years of experience in business innovation, transformation, and especially her expertise revolves around funding from corporate boards. And her experience of being on the buy side of the things of corporate investments to help startups and scale-ups, I think it's really valuable, especially with this chat as well. She has also published the book Investor Ready, which has gone on to become an Amazon category bestseller. That's, I think, fantastic news. And finally, Steven is a strategic advisor, innovator, and transformation leader for organizations looking to thrive in radical uncertainty. So that's kind of the overarching theme of today. And I'll get out of the way and leave this interesting conversation with you guys. Enjoy.
Thank you. Super. Dash, perhaps you'd like to just start us off with an explanation of where you're at with your company and then a lead into the particular challenge that you'd like to focus on today.
Yes, absolutely. So Tuber is a mobile app. We're aiming at tackling overcrowding on public transport. We're specifically looking at the London Underground right now from an MVP perspective. And basically, we really want to change the way that we look at crowding and how we manage crowding. So we're looking to be able to manage crowding from a user perspective as opposed to, systems and backends as it's been done in the past. So what we want to do is we want to be able to provide our users with the best information to help them inform their decisions on the best time to travel. And then so effectively what we're doing right now is we're working to build our own crowding data set that we can analyze, understand, predict the peaks and the low points so that we can help people make these smart decisions when they travel. Ultimately, we want to have enough users on the platform that we can provide individualized suggestions, and that's when you really start to see the managing or the balancing out of changing human behavior, so that we're telling people to travel at different times instead of following those typical trends. So we've identified that we can improve our product by building partnerships with other companies that have services that complement what we're trying to achieve. And I've cold outreached with little, cold called, cold emailed, all the cold outreach with little success. And I recently brought on a partnership director to try and help me build those connections so that I can get into these companies and really talk to them and, inspire them for what we're trying to do. But I'm also very aware of my gaps in my knowledge in this area. And so what I really wanted to chat with you all about was kind of the life cycle of a partnership. How do I get a potential partner interested? How do I get them to the table to have that conversation? Then once I'm there, how do I lead the discussions? And then how do I ensure that I can broker the deal, that it doesn't die, that I'm able to figure out what we both want to get out of this and make it a successful union while also being proactive as we go along. So those are my questions for you all today.
Super. Thank you. So just one question off the bat is, so you've mentioned obviously there are some partners that you've potentially identified. What's the strategic objective that you're trying to achieve through getting that partnership though? Is it that they have distribution that you want? Is it that they have product that you want to be able to offer to your users? What's the objective first up that is really driving the need for a partner?
So most of the partners I've identified have some sort of data that would be useful for us to feed into our machine learning algorithms. So that, it could be, location tracking data from a mobile provider. It could be any type of thing that basically kind of shows how people are moving, or a data source that we could feed that could continually feed our machine learning.
Okay.
So, and we see our partnership being something unique in the sense of this is something that's impacting so many people right now from a COVID perspective. There are people that want to get back to the office. There are employers that want their employees back in the office. And public transport is a huge barrier to making sure that can happen. And that, we might not be able to social distance, but we don't want an armpit in our face either, right? We want to stay away from those droplets as much as possible. So, so we see it as a unique partnership because anyone that can join us to do this will be basically helping rebuild the economy.
Sure.
So Dash, just out of curiosity, what data do you have and are you using right now for your app?
Yeah, so we have a historical crowding data set that was available via the TFL API, Open Data API. And then we've also done an initial analysis on that data to look into what factors impacted how and when people travel. So delays, weather, historic weather, so forth. So that's how we're making our predictions right now. But having a steady stream that comes in obviously helps us improve that. Additionally, we haven't launched the app yet. We're planning to launch the end of October, but we're asking for users to provide feedback and allow location tracking services. So that's how we'll continue to build the predictions once we've gone live.
Okay. So just so I'm understanding, you have the data that TFL is providing, and there's both the data sets and they also have the live streams that you can tap into. It's like a 30-second refresh of the data. And so you're now looking for partners that will augment that data to help you improve predictions of when and where there's going to be. Okay, fine.
And realistically on a more real-time basis and not historic as well.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically what we want to do is we want to be able to sit down and have conversations with some of these people, understand if this is something that they want to help us do, and like I said, again, getting the economy moving again is a huge thing. Getting people moving in the city will help us grow, help us get out of this COVID situation.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. So in terms of kind of starting that partnership journey, typically you want to be able to profile, what your ideal partner looks like. What do they bring to the table? What do they need? What do they how do they act at the moment? Because although there might be numerous players in the market who have data, not all of them are going to be ideal partners for your business. So you need to really be able to identify kind of key characteristics that allow you to do a good weeding process, so that you don't waste time trying to contact the wrong ones for a start. And particularly if you think about this is a model that a great entrepreneur called Daniel Priestley talks about, that if you look at partnerships and you look at it as a triangle, that on one side of the triangle is brand, on another side of the triangle is product, and another side is distribution. Mm-hmm. And the partnership, somehow both parties have to make up all three sides of the triangle in some way. It means one party might bring one side, one party might bring two sides, and then between them that works as a partnership. So you've got to kind of look at which of those aspects you've got and which of those aspects that you want. So once you've done that profiling and you're very specific about who you're after, the getting in front of them part, like you say, the kind of cold messaging isn't quite working, can be some really canny visibility of your product before you try and talk to them. Okay. So for instance, if you know that you want to if you know you want to get real-time data, if it would be available from Transport for London, then you figure out who the key people are in Transport for London, what the key roles are, and then you Facebook ad target the heck out of them. So in advance, so that they start seeing ads and they start seeing content that relates to your product before they've even had a message from you. Mm-hmm. So you're in their consciousness. Oh, there's this thing going. Oh, that maybe that's something we should be involved in. That would be really cool. And then you can start, then contacting those people. And then then there's a level of consciousness that perhaps they've seen. So and you can do that targeting by geo-targeting on their place of work, by targeting on their company name, by targeting on their role. You can get really specific about who sees stuff, so it doesn't have to cost you loads at all. Mm-hmm. But it's a great way of just driving some consciousness of who you are. It's like kind of throwing your business card through their front door before you actually try and give them a call. Mm-hmm. So that can be a good tactical way of getting in front first. Stephen, I don't know if you've got sort of more things to add on that partner selection and getting through the door part.
Yeah, there's a couple of things from my experience of kind of doing data partnerships. And one of the key things that I always kind of look for is, what's the win-win situation? So this, in a sense, kind of goes to the triangle, but it's really, a partnership has to be a win-win. So they bring something to you, you're bringing something to them. So the kind of in the analysis of who the potential partner is try to really work out. And this can either be done, directly through what they, what the companies have said, or through your networks, or finding people who, colleagues of colleagues, so forth, and really try to understand what it is that particular organization needs. In the case of, for example, mobile carriers, they are probably looking for different things from their partnerships and from people who use their data than TfL is, for example, or AccuWeather or whoever else. So it's really kind of then what I find really helpful is to try to find the partners, find a way when speaking to the partners to find the lowest hanging fruit possible. Okay. And so if like with TfL, they are already publishing data, so they've got open data set. If they're still interested in that, kind of putting that forward as part of the government ethos of open data and so forth and so on, getting them maybe to expose a different slice of that data through the API is a lot easier than going to somebody who has nothing to begin with and getting them to build all of that out, for example. So it's really, that's kind of the prep stage. And like Julie said, that means that when you go in to talk to somebody, or even to do that initial contact, you're able to, the territory is a bit more fertile than if you're trying to get them from 0 to 100 as opposed to 70 to 100.
Mm-hmm. And as far as figuring out what it is they want, how would you suggest that research? I mean, is like articles where they've been quoted? Is it, trying to figure it out, trying different messaging? How would you suggest I do the research to find out what the right?
You could definitely look at the kinds of partnerships that they've already got in place, because that will tell you the kinds of data that they're happy to share already or not. So, historic partnership stuff is a good way to try that. Excuse me. The other way to do it is just kind of build some avatars, I guess, if you like, of telecoms companies as a group, have these kinds of objectives. You can generalize a bit to start with. I wonder if there's a slightly sideways way of coming at this, though, because your best data is going to come from people who actually use your app, because you get the richest data from there and you don't have to worry about the quality of it or translating into what your app can use. And the message that's at the heart of your product is get people moving again, but safely. And the people who want that the most are employers. TfL want to run their service and they want people to use it, and the phone companies haven't really got a driver to want to help you necessarily, because it's their data and they hold it and it's really valuable. Why you should just pay for it, kind of, there's that sort of thing going on. But if you did an approach through either through potentially the Mayor of London, with lots of connections to big business, or to the top 30 or 40 large employers who want to get people back in the office safely, to say, could you promote this app to your staff that everyone signs up, and then this helps them to plan their travel safely into the office, then you massively build your audience and you get really rich data on your own terms as well. So I'm just wondering if that's that kind of sideways, those are the people with the problem. They're the ones who are more likely, they've got a stronger motivation to get people to contribute to it than, say, a telecoms company.
That was actually my motivation for bringing on the partnership director, who's just started working with us in the last week, because I did start to think, oh, that's the easiest way to get users on the app quickly. We've already built the machine learning algorithms. We're ready to accept the user data, but it obviously gets better the more users that use the data. So it's kind of that catch-22 of just making sure that we're providing the most accurate predictions up front as we can, so that people want to keep using the app. And so that is one of the directions that we're basically in the last week have kind of started to pivot, to try and move more towards that employer side of things, but still kind of keeping the data fresh in my mind, because we want to provide the best possible product.
So then Dash, apart from that kind of location journey data, what other kinds of data would you want to include in as part of the predictive capabilities?
If I had my
dream, we can dream.
I could have everything. I mean, it would be really, we can make any little drop of data work. I have a very strong team. They're very clever. They're very smart. And we've kind of worked through all the particular scenarios of what we could get. I mean, ideally, it'd be great to have Wi-Fi data, GPS data, tap data for the gate, carriage weight data, even CCTV data, which I don't think we'd get our hands on. But we used the machine learning algorithm that I think it was Google has put out there in order to analyze images and people, and also anonymize their faces, so we don't have to worry about PII. So any sort of data like that was actually quite helpful. We're already using weather data. We've already done analysis as far as how that impacts the way people travel and the way they move. And delays as well, understanding that, how people change, how people move, how long different delays take. So we've already done that, but any continual feed into the algorithm at our early stage is what really would help us, even if it's just a little drop of tap data or a little bit of extra location data, or anything along those lines would help us predict, but until we get enough users on a platform that we can really do it ourselves.
Okay. And I mean, so I think, really what Julie's saying sounds like the most obvious approach, which is, your users are going to be the source of the data, assuming that you can, satisfy the privacy and non-big brotherness of things, which is, but like I've had experience of trying to work with telco data, and it's a long, painful process. So, again, it's about what are your priorities. I mean, if that would be like the solid gold, 100%, that would just be the fantastic. Then just, know that that's going to take a lot of time and effort. And, whereas if you can start to build up the users and start to be able to get more data from your users, and perhaps use the open data that TFL has more in a better way, and maybe start to open the conversation with them about, could they then provide other, sources into their open data. That seems to me to be the kind of the quick first step to start to build some momentum in that direction.
And so once assuming that I get sitting at the table and I'm having those conversations, how do I lead those conversations and make sure they're productive? I feel like I have had a couple of conversations, actually with TFL so far, and I feel like they've just kind of come to a stop. I'm not quite sure why, and I'm thinking that maybe I potentially wasn't quite understanding their side of things enough in order to keep those conversations going. I've basically been trying to do analysis on, where I fell through as far as once I'm having those conversations and once I'm there, just making sure that they're productive and that I get to a partnership at the end of it.
Sure. I mean, I think for, if you get into a session, a room, a Zoom or whatever, I think it can be really helpful to be very, very specific about what you're there for, and asking what they would like to get out of it, so that, that expectation for the next hour is very clearly set. I'm here because I want to figure out what is possible in terms of data sharing that could achieve these things. And I would like to leave this room with some actions that we could jointly take forward that would allow us to, progress to the next step. So that you're absolutely crystal about why you're there, and get their agreement on, is that okay? Up front, yeah, that's okay. We're happy to discuss what's possible. Great. Okay, you've already got a yes. You've already got some buy-in. That from there you can build momentum to explore, and then you can be very specific, about giving them options for types of data that you would like access to, and then that gives them the option to say yes to that but no to this, or we're not sure about that, we'd have to check with the legal team, or whichever. But if you can give people options that are very specific and very, boxed, then you make it really easy for them to make choices and not to feel like it's fluffy, and that there isn't kind of clarity on how you want to progress. So I would give them very specific boxes. So one of those boxes, for instance, might be, we know that you have CCTV recording of all of your platforms all of the time. We would like a protected data set in a secure location, which we can run the Google imaging software over to get a statistical analysis of number of people on the platform at any one time on every platform in the London network. Bang, that's a very, very specific request. And there's no reason why you shouldn't ask for that. Don't assume you won't get that, because that's a perfectly valid people movement project. And it's something they probably already do. They're probably already analyzing that. So they might even go, oh, we've already done it. We've got a data set for that. And then when you get to the end of the session, then you can do that kind of recap that goes, great. Okay, so the objective of today was to get us to a point of understanding which parts we could move forward with. We've talked about these 4 options. You've said this. What are the timelines that we can now agree on those steps for, and get them to confirm which timelines they can operate against, because then it's their buy-in of what do we do next. So it's really important to make sure that, you're giving them opportunity to create their own buy-in by adding their own details, by adding their own input, so that at the end of the session they go out going, oh yeah, we've agreed to do, not she's demanded XYZ, or we've had unrealistic timelines put on us, or anything like that. And also that they're super clear about what they've agreed to, because you've packaged it up really well as different things that you want. And I think that would create a really strong way to then be able to proceed, from that point. And once you get past that point where they say, okay, we're interested in progressing, there are quite a few things that need to be sorted out, be the person that goes, great, do you know what, I'm going to set up a board on monday.com or another project management tool, whatever you use. I'll invite you to it. We'll put all of the steps that need to be achieved in there. You can see it, I can see it, we can all comment, and then we can work collaboratively right from the beginning. So you create that feeling of partnership from the start, rather than just email bouncing and what have you. You can build relationship through the tools that you use as well.
Okay.
So that's some thoughts.
The other thing that I would add to that is also to make sure you have the right people in the room. Okay. And particularly bureaucratic organizations, whether they be public or private sector, it's critical that you have the right people in the room, and that isn't always necessarily the top person. Sometimes it is the person, the product owner for the APIs, for example, or sometimes it's, you know, having the right technical people in there that can say, well, actually, no, you know. An example of this was that one time we were trying to set something up, and it was involving getting user data for a website, and the technical person said, oh, we actually don't collect that data. Oh, okay, well, you know, that was, you know, right there, it was off the table because they didn't collect it. They would have to build it in, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, you know, making sure that in the setup of the meetings, that the right mix of people are there so that you actually don't end up having somebody say yes, and then they go away and talk to the person who's going to do it or the person who needs to approve it, and they go, nah, not going to happen.
Yeah, because
I think
dead in the bottom. It's dead in the water at that point as well. If you're in say you're in a conversation and the conversation isn't, you don't necessarily get the buy-in that you're looking for at that point, how can you pivot in order not to lose that relationship? Or you don't have the right people in the room and you don't want it to die right there. Like what's the best way to pivot in order to keep those conversations alive and make sure that you can come back and talk to the right people?
I think you got two different scenarios there. So if they're not kind of biting against what you're offering at all, then I think it's really good to just be super honest and transparent and go, okay, it seems like this isn't of appetite to you. You know, can we explore why or what would be within your appetite? And really, you know, ask them that kind of very transparent question. Don't let it just fade out and go, oh, well, thanks for your time and go, because then, you know, you haven't got to the bottom of why they're not willing to engage.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, if you've got the other scenario, sorry, what was the second?
About the right people.
Yeah. So if it's just not the right people, then that's an action point. That's okay. So actually, what we need to do is have a follow-up conversation that includes, you know, your technical specialist or your product owner. Could we book that in now? And agree what date we'd do that on. So that's just an action point. I think that's easier to handle. But if you're just getting that general kind of not really, then you need to dig into the why and be quite, you know, not confrontational, but honest and transparent about, okay, well, let's ask the difficult question. Why don't you want to do it?
And what's your suggestion now that so much is not face-to-face and we're not actually sitting at a table, and you can be having good conversations but maybe not have that Zoom call that you hope, or it's a lot trickier now when everything's so virtual. You know, if you're not getting those responses back, how do you kind of do it in a virtual world? How do you keep those conversations alive? Yeah, virtually.
Well, I think that's a much larger philosophical question about the state of business and the world at the moment. So, you know, maybe we don't have a protocol for it all, you know, completely worked out. But I think one of the things is, and this maybe is where being American is a bit of an advantage, is to be persistent. You know, don't worry about being a pain, or pushy a little bit on that. Also because, you know, in this moment, there's a certain level of stress and, you know, everybody is being asked to do more with less at the moment. So part of it is if you want to be a priority, you have to kind of keep yourself as a priority for people. And this also goes back to the thing about, you know, in the prep stage, the closer that you can get, or you can see that they are to what you need, the easier it is. So, if they already have open APIs like TFL, it's a lot easier than, if they have to custom make them for the partnership, and there's all that engineering time and so forth and so on. So I think it's part of that's, prepping and choosing who to have the conversations with and who to focus on.
Okay.
I'd add something to that as well. Remember that organizations of the type that you're contacting, whether they're TFL or telecoms or whatever, are big organizations. There isn't one right person to talk to. So if you do your research and figure out 2 or 3 different routes in, so it might be that they've got an innovation team, it might be that they've got a head of people movement team. Find out who all those are and then go with one route. See if you can get traction with that route. If you can't, you go to route 2, route 3, route 4, because there's such big organizations that there's multiple ways in. I mean, this is, this comes from all my large corporate experience. We'd literally get, startups would come and pitch to one particular area of the business, and that area of the business would be like, it's not really for us. And then they'd go, okay, that's fine. You're like a tiny part of this massive entity. We'll go round the back and we'll talk to this team over here who go, oh my God, that's the best thing since sliced bread. And they're through the door. So I think, really thinking strategically about what your routes in are and having, 1, 2, 3, 4 options can be really powerful as well.
And how often do you think you should follow up or push? How many times? At what point do you say, okay, I've tried all my routes, I've gone in, or is there just never an end? Do you just, keep annoying people till they stop responding to you?
Well, I hopefully it's not till you're, on somebody's blacklist, but I think the idea of being very clear and kind of saying, look, we're here, I'm here for this partnership. I want to bring you something, and and then I get something in return. And this is exactly what I'm looking for, and get them to help you understand what they need, because everybody needs something. And if there's a match, hallelujah. If there isn't, then go like Julie said, go to route 2, go to route 3, whatever it is. But it's, like I said, I think, my philosophy on these is really about win-win. And a lot of times that I've seen people go into trying to set up partnerships, they're rightly or wrongly, they're very focused on what they need. Okay. And if you don't listen, you don't get to hear where that entry point is. And maybe they actually have something that you never thought of and went, oh, wow, that's actually really cool stuff. I'd love to get my hands on that. I never even thought that it could exist. Yeah. So that's part of the engagement is, and I think, people also find that if there's that reciprocity, if there is that sense that they're getting something out of it, they're much more likely to stay engaged than if you just are continually asking them for something.
Right. Just remember that it's not a transaction, it's a partnership. Right.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd share as well. So I know that the founder of a company called Sales for Startups. So they do helping SaaS companies with their sales. And they were their founder, James Kerr-Reid, was working with a particular founder who was saying, God, we're just not getting the customers through the door. We're doing follow-ups. And he was like, well, how many touch points are you doing? Well, we're going back like 3 or 4 times. And he said, do you know how many touch points it took me to get you as a customer? No, 26. 26. Now, that wasn't 26 emails annoying the heck out of the person. That was a mixture of emails, a phone call, sharing a piece of content that you thought was helpful to that person after an initial contact. So, you've had your initial email. Can we talk about this? And then, I emailed you last week about this. But in the meantime, I saw this thing, which I thought you might find really interesting. So I thought I'd just share it. 26 touch points to get that client, but they got the client, and the client didn't even know that they'd had 26 touch points. But it took that long to build enough relationship for the client to accept them.
Right.
So, but you've got to be creative about your touch points so that they don't feel harassed.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So, you know, so don't kind of go, I've sent 2 emails, I shouldn't send any more. You know, how else can you get in touch? Yeah. You know, or record a video and direct message it to them on LinkedIn. That's another great way of getting to people. It's a complete, you know, or upload a video to YouTube, but put it as a private video, and then send them an email saying, I've just uploaded this video to YouTube that's just for you. I'd really like it if you could take a minute to just watch it and see if it's of interest. It's just different ways of getting people's interest and going, oh, that's a bit different. That could be what it takes.
Oh, very clever ideas. Thank you.
Let me jump in here as we're approaching the end of the hour. I mean, wow, what a fantastically full conversation with many engaging learning points. I've taken note of those and shared them in the chat. I don't know if you've seen them, but I got 11 of those. And I think that each of them is a gem. So I truly appreciate you coming here. That's great. A few things that I think would be worthwhile to maybe touch upon is, for example, something Julie said, and especially in the context of these touch points, there was a research that stuck with me in another business that I've built. It was a B2B e-learning company. And I think Google has a data point. They say we've established that it takes either 11 touch points or 7 hours in total of exposure for someone to a brand, to a customer, for that conversion to start. And I think this perhaps might be in one of Dan Priestley's books that I have actually had the chance to read. I think it was last year or 2 years ago. So I think that was something that's interesting. One thing I would perhaps like to hear you expand on a bit, Julie, is that, and it is number 9 in our list of insights, is if the customer is not biting, acknowledge that this is perhaps not of an appetite for them in a transparent way, as you said. Be transparent and ask what would be. So I really think this is a good piece of advice, but I also think there is a almost a dilemma, like a contradiction or a challenge there, which is on the one, and I would like to hear what you think about this challenge and Stephen's point of view as well. On the one hand, when you're absolutely precise and clear about what you want, then it's actually a clearer path to getting what you want, because it builds trust, credibility from the eyes of the customer, and so on. But in the world of startups, we are agile. Like we look at 7 directions at once, right? And we can go in 3 of those directions at once. But working with larger organizations, this is not always the way that this is approached. And I think there is like a dilemma here in which the founder can do all of those, but has to just perhaps show herself in a limited way to build that credibility. And there's that feeling of, I know I can do so much more, but I don't want to tell it because I don't want to lose their trust, kind of like a tension there. So how do we deal with that? And what do you think is the best compromise there?
I think you have to go with the foot in the door approach. So, you know, you don't want to scare people. You don't want to ask for too much up, you know, in the first place, so that you make it seem too hard to interact with you. What you're trying to do is give them the path of least resistance, which says, I want these things which you have, which are very simple for you to provide, and together we can create something very good. So if you go in going, we want 37 different data sets, then they're going to say, you know, it's a bit difficult. So I would really target 2 or 3 key things that you're absolutely desperate for, that you're, you know, they would be your big wins, that are well packaged, and go in for those initially. And once you've built the relationship, then you can say, okay, that's great, we've established we can do this. What about if we do X, Y, and Z as well? Or once you've got their agreement to those first couple of bits, can you then say, and is there anything else that you think you could provide that would be of value, and put the onus onto them for expanding it.
Okay.
And I would just add one more thing about that, which is that if I go in and say, I'm looking for XYZ data sets, they may be able to say, oh, well, we don't have those, or we can't give those to you. But so there is a slight danger in that. But if you're going in and saying, these would be my ideal things, but given that this is a partnership, I'm open to see what you have and what you need. And, again, it may be serendipity comes in, which is that they can't give you what you thought that you needed from them, but they actually have something that you discover is even more valuable than what you were looking for when you walked in the door. And that's happened a couple of times in my experience with kind of brokering data deals, where we went to a provider and said, this is the stuff that we're looking for. And they were like, yeah, well, we can't really get you that, but we've got all this other data sitting over here that we'd like to do something with. And when we took a look at it, it was infinitely richer than anything we could have thought of for what we needed. It just required us to pivot a bit. So, that's where the flexibility comes in. And then Oz, to kind of this, to what you're saying, yes, big individuals maybe within big corporates don't have maybe don't necessarily have the pivotability, if you like, that startups have. But Julie's point is that large companies, because they're so large, actually you can pivot from that direction to another direction and find another door in. So I think there's also that to look at.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the more outcome focused you can be, because then, you might go we want this data set, but they don't have that data set, as Stephen said. But if you can talk about the outcome that you're trying to achieve, then they might go, oh, okay, to achieve that outcome, actually, we could do this instead. So if you can really think about outcomes and talk about those as, what you're trying to achieve, I think that's a better way of introducing that flexibility of, that they might provide a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's all good. It's all good feedback. I think a lot of what you all have said, I have put into practice, but probably not well. And so having a better strategy around how I contact, when I contact, what I'm saying, and making sure that my message isn't getting lost in it. And also just going back to, well, what are each one of these elements, especially if it's dealing with the government, trying to achieve? And it might be that, TfL actually isn't trying to achieve this right now, but the Mayor of London is, or, something else, and trying to kind of pivot in that way. Thinking outside the box a little bit more.
Yeah, and the, that thing about how do you engage people when it's Zoom? See if you can send them something in the post before a meeting. So, have you got a good brochure for your business? Just an 8-page brochure that describes what you do. And then you go, right, I want to send you something in the post in advance of the meeting. Would you mind providing me with a postal address? Fine. Then they've got something in their hands that's real, even though you're not in the room. That's very powerful. So just little things like that can just make the difference, that there's something tangible to what you're talking about. Brand your background, make yourself, all those things that just go tick, 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 tick. And make everything more real to them, because what you're talking about at the moment is conceptual, and you need to make it feel like reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great feedback. I've really, really appreciated and enjoyed this session. It's really got my mind ticking.
Fantastic.
Thank you all. I think this was one of the best conversations we've had so far in this format. I'll do like a Blitz summary of all those key 12 points. So it's a way for Dash to recap and reshuffle those ideas. And I think I saw a wonderful graph the other way. A startup ends when when the founder runs out of ideas on what to do about the business. So as long as we have ideas, I think there's always a lot of room to grow. So those 12, first, identify your ideal target partner, really important in building these B2B dialogues. Specific targeting of target personas through ads to establish awareness of brand before giving them a call was Julie's point. Perfect. Third, clarify what's in it for them. Start with the lowest hanging fruit by Steven. 4, consider focusing on larger employers who want their employees to travel safely, perhaps as a way to get a volume of people on the platform. Make sure you have the right people in the room. This is number 5. Not always a top person, sometimes technical people, sometimes the product owner. Number 6, it would be helpful to be very, very specific and crystal clear about what you want, especially in a B2B meeting. And at the end of the session, focus on getting agreement on a timeline that works with the client's realities. 7, create a feeling of partnership through collaboration tools. 8, it might pay to be pushy. I think this was Steven's point. Sometimes, especially in this age of digital communications, where it's more difficult to build rapport. Number 9, is if the customer is not biting, then acknowledge that this is perhaps not of an appetite for them. Be transparent and ask what would be. Number 10, there are multiple ways into large organizations. Perhaps one single team is not really interested, but you can go around the back and find another team that's more excited to get you through the door. 11, stay engaged while pushing through a real understanding of customer needs and wants. And number 12, be ready to do micro pivots during the meetings if you discover a new need. And number 13, I think I couldn't take note of it, but it was Julie's last comment that she mentioned just now. But I think these are all wonderful ways for other founders to think about how they can get, especially for other consultants as well, not just startup founders, but for consultants working with large organizations. I think these are all great pieces of advice. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed having you on. And I'll end our session here. Make sure to take a look at some of the other content that we've created. And this is for the people listening in and you as well. If you would like to support what we are doing, you know how. Take a look at the channel, subscribe, share, like, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Have a great day. Have a great day, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, the stream has been concluded.